Hello, my name is Nils O'Donoghue and I'm one of the partners at Chadwick Lawrence who works within our regulatory and crime team. Last week, my colleague Daniel issued a video in relation to the employment law implications of the current UK-wide COVID-19 vaccination rollout. I thought it would be helpful to build on that and specify the steps that we believe employers will need to take if they want to store the data of who and who has not had a COVID vaccination within their workplace. I would, however, like to start by stating that the current safety measures which employers are expected to put in place to make sure that their premises are COVID secure are unlikely to disappear anytime soon. It is extremely unlikely that simply storing data on who and who has not had a COVID vaccination is going to give a green light to relax any of these safety measures. In respect of the current Information Commissioner's Office guidance on COVID-19 data, it has issued guidance on the steps it expects employers to take if they are storing data in relation to employee COVID tests and also a record of those employees who may have suffered COVID symptoms. And the steps that it expects employers to take are that the data storage and the requirement to store this data must be reasonable, fair and proportionate. It is unclear if the ICO will issue any further guidance in respect of steps that should be taken by employers and other organisations who are storing vaccination data. However, our view is that whether such guidance is issued or not, the steps that you should take are likely to be more stringent than the current ICO guidance. This is because the storage of data regarding your employees' vaccination status would be classified as storing what is known as special category data under the GDPR regime. We believe that the first step you should ask yourself is it actually necessary to store vaccination data at all? This is for a number of reasons. The first is that there are currently a number of vaccinations prior to COVID that individuals either chose to have or not to have. This is in relation to a number of other diseases such as influenza and flu. Most employers don't require employees to disclose whether they have had these vaccinations or not. And on the face of it, there appears to be very little difference between the safety measures that would be put in place resulting from COVID-19 vaccination disclosure and these what you may call more run-of-the-mill vaccinations. This is because the current guidance and clinical trials indicates that while COVID-19 vaccinations stop a good number of people becoming seriously ill and hospitalised, it is unclear whether the vaccination programme will actually reduce the level of COVID transmission. So it may be worth asking, is this data required to be stored by you at all? Will this make your workplace any safer? This will depend on the nature of your business. It may be, for example, that your business requires individuals to work with those who are clinically vulnerable or may even be clinically vulnerable themselves. It may also be the case that you have employees who are required to travel around the world and that these individuals may be subject to special rules by third-party countries as to their vaccination status. So the first step that we would recommend you take is asking, is the storage of this data actually necessary? And if it is, will it make your workplace any safer? Do not just collect COVID-19 vaccination status for the sake of it. It must serve a necessary purpose. And we would suggest at the moment that purpose must be making your workplace a safer place to work. If you decide that it is necessary to store COVID-19 vaccination status data, then the next question we would suggest you ask is, what data are you going to hold and how long are you going to hold it for? We would suggest that you only hold data in relation to an individual's vaccination status, i.e. whether they have had that vaccination or not. It may also be that you want to store the date of that vaccination being administered to that particular employee. We think this would be an extremely useful thing to store, particularly when it comes to actually deciding how long you will store this data for. Again, it is not clear at this current time and during this early stage of the vaccination rollout as to how long a vaccination will actually be effective for. It may be in 12 months' time, for example, we are aware that the vaccination only lasts for a period of 5 or 6 months. If this is the case, then we would suggest only holding that data for that period of time, as to hold it for any longer would not serve any necessary purpose. So once you've decided whether the storage of the data is necessary, what you will store and how long you will store it for, we would suggest that you need to put together a comprehensive data protection impact assessment. This will need to be a substantial document and will take some time to complete. In terms of the content of this impact assessment, I have detailed that in the handout in some depth. However, would like to just specify some particular key points. It is important you put an executive summary together as to the purpose for which you are storing this data within the impact assessment. It is also vital that you put together an executive summary of why you are holding that data, and particularly the basis on which you are holding that data. Many of you will be familiar with having to justify the basis of any data that you hold within an organisation under the very narrow GDPR basis. Because you'll be holding special category data, it is, however, vital that you specify one of the very narrow bases under Article 9 of the GDPR for why you are holding such data. These may be because you are protecting your workforce under the Health and Safety at Work Act, because you are complying with your implied contractual obligations, because you are protecting the vital interests of your employees, because you may be carrying out obligations in the field of employment law, or for the purposes of assessing working capacity on health grounds. I have detailed the basis in some more considerable depth within the handout and would ask that you look at those. You should also, within your impact assessment, detail how you will inform your employees of the data being held, and also whether it will be shared with other organisations and why. Again, it is important that you explain how long the data will be held for, how long it will be within your possession, how it will be kept up to date, and ensure that it is accurate. You should also make sure within the impact assessment that you make individuals aware of how they can enforce their data rights and how you will deal with any data requests that are made by them. One particular quirk may also be that although you are a UK-based organisation, your IT cloud, for instance, or systems may actually be based in another country. If this is the case, you should identify any third-party countries outside of the UK which the data will be stored in. As I said, within the handout, I have gone into some considerable depth as to the requirements and content of an impact assessment. It's important that once you've put this impact assessment together, that you then put the safety steps that you're going to put into place into practice. Finally, we recommend a second step should you be looking to store an employee's vaccination status. This is updating the internal documents that you should already have as part of your GDPR compliance. It is important that you amend your data protection notices, your data protection policy, and your privacy standards to reflect the fact that you may now be holding special category data for the first time. It is also important that within your retention guidelines as to how long you will keep data, that you update these and ensure that you specify how long the vaccination status and any further information that you may be gathering will be stored. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact myself or a member of our team.